Hi guys, my name is Dante, and welcome back to the cheating Black Widow tutorial. So yeah, here we go. We finished our 3D scene, at least to a point where we have nothing else to decide so far. Anything else we can think of only when we'll actually start painting, and then we'll just get back and fix something if we need to. And since I kind of feel like I'm already done playing around with Blender obsessively, I'm not stopping that at all, but I can do other things. So let's actually export the picture and see what we can do to adapt it to a painting, extending what I explained in the end of the previous episode. This is the final render that I've got. It actually has just 1/4 of the resolution that we actually need. It's only 1000 pixels vertically, but it's totally fine because we don't actually need super sharp and precise rendering of 3D edges that we have here. They're very simple anyway. So yeah, I got this picture. Let me show you real quick what I've set up right here. As I said before, it's really important to get as much work done automatically as possible when we're transferring the picture from 3D to our Studio Pro or whatever we paint. Because it's a separate program, separate process, and separate device, like it's gonna be a lot of pain if we would have to readjust things all the time. And this kind of stuff is what Photoshop can help us with a lot, because of such things as adjustment layers that can apply the same kind of settings of curves and whatever to the layers underneath. Even if we replace the render at the bottom layer, we'll still get all the effects done. But also, aside of adjustment layers, there are smart objects. And smart objects is pretty much when one layer is not just a layer, but like a separate PSD document. In here, I actually have like an inception of these smart objects because there's another one afterwards. And this final smart object is where I put my render in. So right now we're in this smart object. This is a document that has 1000 pixels vertically, so this is exactly where we put our render. And this is the previous version, then now we have this one. And on top, we also have another smart object where I put in my versions of the fog layer, the depth layer. And why I'm using smart objects, because I can do whatever I want outside of this smart object to it, and it won't actually influence the simple layer of the actual render that I put in here. So next time I re-render something, I just drop it in here, and all the smart object tree gets all the effects updated on top of the new render. A little bit like a node tree in a way, but it's a complex layer system, I would say. So yeah, at the bottom we have just the render layer. Then on top I put the rendering of the depth, just to apply some extra air perspective where I feel like I need it. And this is the kind of mask I applied to it. So in the end it looks like this. Doesn't look very good, but the gradient ramp that does this to it actually gets the job done really well, because this way we get all the silhouettes of the characters completely black, so we only highlight something behind the Black Widow and the kids, just the way I need it. I need to highlight the main characters and introduce some nice blue tints to the picture behind as well, so I think it looks pretty cool this way. And so yeah, this mask, this 40% opacity and lighten mode, and this gradient map on top of it, it will all apply automatically to whatever new rendering of this depth layer I'll put into it later. That's pretty cool. So we save this thing. This is what we have, the first stage of compositing, right? We combine two different renders that we have. Then on a higher level, as you can see, we're still in the same resolution, but we have this camera raw filter applied to it. And as you can see, camera raw supports smart objects, so it automatically reapplies to whatever I will change inside of the smart object. Pretty cool. And you can even mask it. So yeah, this stage is just to apply this camera raw filter on top of whatever's going on. And then the next stage is the final stage, where you can see the document is already 4000 pixels tall. So pretty much the smart object is stretched to this resolution now, and it will always be automatically stretched again. So you see 400% 100% upscaling. So in here on top I applied some vignetting, some higher contrast, and also this filter that I don't really like right now. I don't like the gamma it gets. Like, I mean, this looks nicer, I think, than this. So maybe just not use it at all, or maybe use something else. I'm more leaning to the side of not using it at all. Just this contrast and vignetting is good enough. Maybe even without vignetting. Anyway, so that's color correction that I did. But then we zoom in and we see this kind of quality, which is totally cool. It looks very good as a base, but I was thinking, like, if I would start painting on top of this with my sharp, highly texturized brush, the whole picture, like the rest of it, where I didn't put my strokes on it, will stand out by being too smooth. So I decided to apply another smart object where I have my favorite texture that I apply to all my brushes, this kind of a canvas, not really canvas thing. And so it has the resolution of the document, so it's high resolution texture. And normally it would look like this in soft light mode, but what I did is I actually used a so-called find edges filter. So it gives you this kind of effect. Everywhere in the image where there is a high contrast change of color, it shows a white outline. And so I applied these edges to the picture as a mask, and we get this kind of result. So overall, the picture kind of keeps being smooth, but most contours of all the objects everywhere, they get this my brush texture applied to it, which looks pretty close to what a brush would do when you paint. When you have a smooth surface, usually it all blends together and you don't get any texture, and only where you would actually make a stroke covering the background, that's where the edge of the brush would reveal the texture. So it makes sense to apply this kind of effect. And we're free to choose how much of it will be there, just so the picture overall, even though it has lower detail, so it wouldn't be just unpleasantly digitally smooth. Because our goal here is to prepare a good base to start painting on this. So I have this, and sadly, pretty much this moment where I apply a filter like this and use it as a mask, this is the only moment where I couldn't automate it. The only way I could do at least something is I can copy the smart object and apply this find edges filter to the smart object. So I have like two versions of the same thing, and this one will be just ready to use as a mask at any moment. So that's good to have, actually. This is a good idea, because otherwise I would forget the settings for it. Can I even invert you? Oh yeah, that's cool. And desaturate you. Actually, both stages, inverting and desaturating, can be done with a gradient map, so go away invert. So in here I'll also adjust the brightness of it right away. It's gonna be already different from what I have. Yeah, something like this maybe. I wonder, like, now the only thing that is not automated is applying it as a mask to the thing. Can I use a smart object as a mask? How can I possibly even try that? No, I can't do that actually. Mask is always a mask, right? Like, it's a simple black and white layer, it can't be a smart object. But it can be done a bit differently, doesn't it? Okay, people look this up a lot apparently. Finally. Oh my god, it was like at least 40 minutes or something. I was researching this stuff. Finally works. So yeah, now we do have, like, we can delete this mask, and we have the same copy of our main composition smart object right here with filters, gradient map, and find edges. So in the end we get I can't really show it separately, I guess. Yeah, kind of like that, but it's not actually semi-transparent. Anyway, it's inside of the masking group, and then this group is masked by whatever is going on inside, using the weirdest blending modes of layers that I've never actually tried in Photoshop. This actually may be the only thing in Photoshop that I don't know perfectly well. So anyway, the point is that we have this group, right? There's one layer inside of it where the texture is, and another group inside of this group where our mask will be. So to use a separate layer as a mask like that, we work on these two layers in the way they blend. So double clicking on the layer, we get this window, and in here you see these settings are different, and also I think shallow knockout, it seems like it doesn't even matter, right? What about here? Does it not matter here as well? Oh yeah, so it matters here. So let's start with a group. Group needs to have this shallow knockout mode, and this thing should be brought down to 0. And then we go to the same thing for the layer of the mask, and in here this shouldn't be touched, but the layer itself should be in screen mode, so using blend mode screen. And there's some black magic going on with these things. I don't even know exactly, like I haven't really figured out their mechanics. I don't know what these things do. They somehow cut out what the layers are gonna be underneath it or something. I don't know. Anyway, apparently like blend if, and if we remove white out of it, it turns white into transparency, something like that. Initially it looks like this, so you just have two of these points, but you alt click on the white one, you break them apart like this and bring this to 0, and suddenly everything works. Like, what? I don't know what this means. Like, this is a black point, and this is like, we stretch the transparency from white to black, so it has the soft gradient of transparency, I guess. Haven't played enough with it to figure out what it means. And yeah, we finally have it working, but I feel like it's kind of laggy as well, or maybe it's, I'm also like in 16-bit color mode, by the way. You see, it's so I wouldn't have any color bending from using a lot of color correction on top of it, and we don't have to do anything but to replace 2 render layers inside of this thing, and everything else will apply on its own. Not sure if we'll ever need it in this, like in our project right here with Black Widow, but I mean, this is good to know that we can automate things this way. Alright, so I'm happy with the picture. Yeah, I think I'm just happy with the picture. I don't want to be doing anything else to this. Looks just right, I think. So now let's bring this whole thing to our Studio Pro and see how we can ruin all of this with our painting. Render composed. Alright, so here we are on iPad, and this is where we left our Black Widow project when we started this. And here I have my Files app open, and this is my Google Drive, and in here I can see my main file, drop it to the comp, new layer, boom. I also just now went through a trouble to render contours layer. That may be helpful. So this stuff is pretty much gonna replace a sketch for us. Not sure why the walls don't have the outline though. That's kinda lame. I didn't see that. And also I have the wireframe layer, but it's not very good because it's rendered triangles and that's gross. So that's what it looks like. So I'm thinking let's make some kind of blend out of the 2 in a group. So this one is gonna take just a little bit of that contrast. I mean, at least we have the... Oh, no, I just noticed. Yeah, the wireframe layer doesn't have that lens distortion because I wasn't using my compositing nose in Blender. So yeah. Whenever you make something complex, you will always mess it up when you do this for the first time at least. And yeah, in Art Studio Pro we don't really have that kind of filter as far as I know. There's pinch, but it's not nearly as accurate as we need. I mean, it's not bad actually. It did some stuff. Well, what do you know? This actually looks pretty good. Like, it's not perfect, some areas are not exactly in place, especially on the very edges. Like, the Jesus kid on the top right is doubled. In any case, it's better than it used to be. So yeah, we'll keep it something like this, and the whole group will be in multiply. There we go. Mostly where we need to see wireframe is actually the carpet, I think. That was the only place where I specifically added a lot of polygons, so we would see a good perspective guide. Kinda like the perspective ruler. So let's actually start. The first thing we should add right away is all the objects that are missing. For instance, fire over candles. I didn't add that, and we don't really have it present in the picture at all. There's no actual fire going on. Another thing is the paintings. We should actually paint something on them. And the same thing goes for the carpet. It shouldn't be just plain red. It's not a thing. Like, we should add some kind of old school pattern to it. And after that, we'll think on the design of the kids and the Black Widow. So right now, let's start with the carpet, just because I don't know how long I can be doing this in this episode, and it would be a good transition because we're gonna be using a lot of cheating to make this carpet work. So I'm gonna create a new layer. It's probably gonna be in multiply. We'll see. And so for now we have this ability to paint over without losing any details underneath and any lighting. Okay, so this is what they look like. So yeah, let's start with the thick red frame with a separate pattern on the perimeter of this. And then we'll see. So it's probably a good idea to build a perspective guide in Art Studio Pro to follow the perspective of this image. Something like this will do for now. The problem is, first of all, we have the lens distortion that is apparently growing into a big problem overall. Like, if I would just use this layer like this and just started painting, which is totally fine to do, it would be no problem. But because we're using different sketch layers that I had to get out of Blender with different ways, I lost the lens distortion there. And now we're thinking on using the perspective guide in Art Studio, but we have all the curves bent, so it's not really that perspective now. But even all of that is not that important, and the main reason why we can't use the perspective guide for a carpet is because the carpet is slightly rotated. It's not perfectly parallel to all the walls and everything, so it has a completely different perspective. But whatever, it's not that important anyway. We can draw this way. The only thing is I want to make sure I draw straight lines, generally, even though everything is curvy. So I'm gonna do one thing that I also wanted to tell you guys. This is an interesting thing. Not a lot of people know that on iPad, everyone is talking about how you can be using like Procreate or Art Studio and you can export a PSD and then open it in Art Studio, or the other way around. It all totally works, but do you know that you can copy layers from one app to another? And it also totally works, even with transparency and everything. Only one layer though, I suppose. So we're gonna just copy the whole image of this. And in Procreate, if we create a new canvas, it will give us this option of creating the same resolution as what we have in the clipboard. So it even like helps us and immediately even automatically pasted what I had in the clipboard right here. Awesome. So why I'm using Procreate is because of their new awesome quick drawing tools. It's much easier to create all kinds of shapes now comparing to any other app I've ever known. I should probably delete the line that I just showed you. So yeah, I'll create a 4-corner shape. Quadrilateral, and I'm just gonna put it somewhere in there. We don't need to guess perfectly, obviously, because we only need to guess what's actually gonna be visible. I guess something like this. Like, really, the only thing we really need is only this closer line. This is the one that's actually gonna make a difference, like something that we should actually paint well enough. You know what? It was all a stupid idea. But you get the point, like, this is the way we can do this. If the carpet would be much more visible. I'm just trying to make a tutorial out of this. Just in this case, it's really not that big of a deal. We're gonna only need to draw some details over here, and in here it's already gonna be so blurry, it's whatever, and this is it, and we're all gonna die anyway. But it's a good thing I got to show you the trick with the copying and pasting layers between apps. That's pretty cool. So after that, we would actually copy the layer where we drew all these lines and pasted it right here, and it would fall exactly into the same place with transparency and everything. Alright, so I'm obviously stalling because it's so hard to start painting over something that you used to be working on completely differently for a while. Now it feels like any stroke I will make will be so out of place, and it will be. Yeah, anyway, I'm gonna shut up and I'll try to paint something. I'll do the carpet for a little while. actually, while I'm doing my awesome work, we'll probably finish this episode very soon, progress-wise, I mean. I just wanted to talk about a little bit the whole process and how to actually approach it if you're, like, trying to learn something from this. First of all, we obviously got carried away with amount of detail and the way we rendered everything very specifically and everything. That's obviously not the only way to cheat yourself into creating a good painting. We could just get a sketch out of it, like just these outlines. That may have been all we needed. And after that, we would do everything in here, just choosing our colors and everything, and that would be a completely different cheating experience. But in this case, I wanted to just use lights and especially the volumetrics to try and build a system where I can quickly create a good base for a painting that I can move on from. So all of this detail blurring and textures applied on top, that was all interesting and everything, and it makes sense if you actually rendered something that is close enough to what you will get in the end. Like, I'm not going to change most of the colors. I will mostly be just grabbing the colors that already exist and then just add details on top in somewhat like this of a fashion. There are also other ways how to combine rendering full image and then painting, where you can actually paint textures of the objects and they will blend properly into the picture. But that's like a different level of the thing. It's really interesting and we'll give it a try in maybe the next painting we'll do. But yeah, that's also a way if you would render in passes. If you would render the image without reflections, then reflections separately and volumetrics separately. And then you would blend them all together in 3 layers in our studio, and you would be painting only in the colors layer without reflections and the fog. In that case, you would be painting colors mostly in multiply mode on all the surfaces, and they would perfectly blend into the air perspective and under the reflections just right. But we obviously don't have that right now. So yeah, my point with this is that the 3D part doesn't have to be this complicated at all. It may be a much simpler picture, maybe just literally a sketch, just the outlines, and that will be fine. And yeah, another thing that I wanted to say is about how this is not cheating at all, actually, obviously, because the word cheating kind of sounds like you will achieve a result without knowing what you're doing. Like at an exam, when you cheat and you read someone else's answers or get them online or whatever. That way you don't know the subject, but you get a good result on the exam. In this case, it's a very different story, because not because you like need to know the 3D and stuff like that. Even if you know it, it's not gonna help you when you paint. Because like for instance, I know for a fact that I added some dark spots right here on the carpet. Like I just wanted to add some kind of texture to it out there. But I know for a fact that this texture will completely disappear in the shadow right here. Just because the shadow will make it very dark, and the only brightness that we see right now is actually a lit up fog. And that thing doesn't have anything to do with the texture of the carpet, so because of that it completely disappears. And also the colors of these dark spots that I'm adding here, they actually should be not that warm, they should be closer to this color. This is the color of the shadow, the color of the dark objects, dark anything in that fog situation. And that means I can't deviate from that color when I'm that dark. And I mean, all of this you won't be able to learn from me in this one episode. Obviously, what I said right now, most people who didn't know it still don't know it, pretty much. But this is the point of it. Like, if you don't know how to paint details close to the edge of the cylinder, you won't be able to add details to this dress and stuff like that. You won't be able to properly add details to the face if you don't know how the basic shading works and how the skin translucency works and stuff like that. So you still need to know it. It's just that this picture that we have here is a lot more precise than I would be ever willing to make myself build it. Like if I would be building it in a sketch, the geometry would be very far from being this perfect, literally. You know what? It actually seems like a really cool experiment to try and render this image in 3 separate layers, with volumetrics and reflections separately. I'll prepare that thing for the next episode, and we'll see how that will be useful or not. Actually, how about we paint this from the opposite? I think this is a good idea. I'll cover all of the visible parts. Like, visible is the one that is well lit. This is the only place where we will see the patterns on the carpet. I will cover everything with somewhat of a dark color, because basically the whole carpet is overall, well, not really, like, it's not darker, but it's easier to add brighter details by erasing on top of the darker ones than going the other way around. Alright, now the whole carpet is darker. Let's actually finger it a little bit. Apply a finger tool to it to smudge the strokes a little bit. Although I'm not even sure that I should have done that. We should introduce as much brush strokes as we can right now, because we have a huge lack of that on our painting. But yeah, in this area I had really strong lines that I didn't want. So now, since we're still in multiply mode, we can paint now what actually looks like some kind of color. This feels much better. Alright, this actually starts to look a little bit more grown up when I added smaller strokes. It kind of blends in. Really working from darker to brighter makes you kind of like, I don't know, it feels better. You, for some reason, make better decisions or something. So yeah, this way we've got some texture going on. The thing is, when we're painting like this over a colorful object, this is not the best way to do it, and maybe it's something that I will also change in the next episode. Thing is, when we paint and we don't want to ruin the lighting that we have in 3D and everything, we can only darken, unless we're actually repainting completely. But right now we want to keep the details of the lighting. I want to keep these soft shadows from the window and everything, because this is just the first pass. I'm in a separate layer, quickly adding the spots to mark in what's going on the carpet. And because of that, I'm like working in the like a 3D texture mode. I'm trying to blend into the existing geometry, existing colors. And this mode can only work if there's no strong reflection on the object, and only by painting darker than what we already have. That's why I can't really, like, if there would be pure white details on this carpet, I wouldn't be able to do it, because the initial color of the carpet is already far from being white. It's actually already red, so I'm sort of messing it up a bit, but it looks alright. It can be just a bit of a different material of the carpet or something. So to some extent it works. And also a cool thing is we can use this layer in normal mode, but then we'll put it in a group in multiply mode. Same thing we did with the sketches. There are 2 layers, they're both in normal mode, but the group itself is in multiply. And so in here we can add more layers and cover over what we already have. Even painting like with white, it will be erasing what's underneath on the texture that I already drew, but it's not gonna actually, you see, not gonna make anything brighter than the initial colors of the rendering. So that's a cool thing that we're gonna use a lot more in the next episode. I'm all the way in the next episode now, because this is not working super well, although the carpet is kind of starting to look nice. So yeah, I'm gonna add a little bit more stuff to it right now, and then we'll add the lights over the candles and try to make it blend in well with whatever is already rendered around, and that will be the end of the episode. So yeah. Alright, so for now I think this is mostly all we need to have on this carpet, even more than we need actually, but it was a good place to train a little bit how to actually implement details into a painting base like this, and it's pretty much the way any painting would do. So yeah, added some spots, added some straight lines, some visible separate bigger spots here and there, and some smaller spots inside of them just so they would look detailed enough, and just so the viewer wouldn't get bored with looking at all the spots, I also added some of the wigglies, like branches, on this kind of pattern. It needs more work, but yeah, we can go back and forth. As you have noticed, I've been working in this mode a lot, actually turning off the 3D layer itself and just adding stuff on transparency. That's because in this mode you can pick up colors and they will be actual colors of this multiply group. Because what's the main problem of blending different layers in different modes is that you can't really pick up the color properly, like the actual colors of the layer, because blending mode makes it different. And in Photoshop we have a mode for the color picker that says only pick up colors from one layer. I think we really need that in our studio. So yeah, I think it looks detailed enough for now. Now let's create a layer in add mode, if there is one in here. Linear dodge add. And let's do the candle lights. So they are over there. So we'll start with something dim and fairly saturated. Something like that. And then we'll create yet another layer in the same add mode and add more brightness on top. Probably with the same color. Yeah, this looks just about right. You see, it makes the distortion from orange to yellow on its own. I didn't change the color. Cool looking. Let's add some glow, because even the tips of the candles have glowing. Same brush, same color, making it much bigger and a lot less opaque. And this thing is best done in another layer, but in screen mode. I need a smoother brush for this. This one is too messed up for a glow. I think actually, yeah, it's actually cold glow. And what's important to remember, that glow is not just a little soft spot. It actually has a pretty big radius. It's just it's like super transparent far away, really subtle. And if you don't do that, like with a bigger radius, I'm adding a bit more glow at a bigger distance. If you don't do that, it doesn't really look like glow. It looks like, yeah, you just drew that glow. And now let's make it much smaller, the brush, and use a bit of a yellower color to add some higher contrast glow very close to the fire. So, something like this. I think it looks pretty legit. Alright, so yeah, I guess this is it. Next thing would be the paintings on the wall. In that case, the best way to start it, as we already figured out, would be to fill up the whole surface of the painting with one color, and then paint to a brighter color, still being in that multiply layer. But yeah, we'll do that in the next episode. For now, we finally moved to painting, which is great. About time. And yeah, we'll make more decisions on everything. We'll change the dress a lot, because no dress would have that kind of a thick, leathery quality to it. No Victorian dress, I mean. Today, everything is possible. So yeah, this is it. Tell me guys what you think about what we have. Man, that carpet texture, it blends in pretty well. I love how the shadows from the window are still there, yet we added quite some details. So yeah, look forward for the next episode where I will prepare 3 different layers to work with a lot better. And I'm gonna go to bed now. But also, I thank you for watching if you did. I guess you did if you're here. Leave a like and subscribe. Tell a friend. Work from the dark. Do whatever you want. And I will see you in the next one. Bye. This is all actually so interesting. Like, I wonder, this first painting we did, it takes a while, but how quicker is gonna be the second one?